Good morning, it's Marty Colbert. I'm part of the Wimmera Action Group, and today, the 27th of January, is 1 year on from the catastrophic Little Desert fire. But I'm not in the Little Desert, I'm actually just north of Natimuck in my friend's paddock that was hit by the January the 9th fire. It sort of harks back to all the issues we faced with the Little Desert fire being repeated and writ large with the Natimuck fire. Those issues are the very inept management of public lands for controlled burns, but also the endemic overloading of bureaucracy within our state government that leaves groups like the CFA hamstrung to act properly. And a key example of that is the Horsham Incident Control Centre, the apparatus in place there that is very slow to react. And in the case of the fires we have out here, which are predominantly very fast moving across open country, they simply can't act quick enough. Anyway, I thought it was a great time to do a bit of a quick review of what happened last year, but also give you an update on some of the issues around the Natimuck fire. Here's the Mt Arapiles Telstra Tower, communications hub for this end of the Wimmera. It's a very strategic piece in what is available in the time of an emergency to ensure that people can communicate, but also that others can be made aware of the situation that's at hand. We all fully expected it would have a set of batteries and even a diesel generator. Well, up here today I can verify it's got a diesel generator. It's in the background there. No doubt it's got a set of batteries, but for whatever reason it failed and we lost a crucial communication link. The volunteers and also the other people out there in tractors and the likes were actually in a situation where there was no communication available. Efforts were made with UHF radios, but what ended up being the most usable system was going back to the really old days and a person in a vehicle ferrying messages from one part of the action to the other. Serious questions need to be asked. What is the backup system in this infrastructure? Why wasn't it maintained and how did it fail? Because prior to that, there was plenty of infill from the other towers in the district that in the event this tower went down, we would still have 3G, quite usable, but that has also been taken away from us. We never wanted 5G, it was forced upon us. When 4G debate started, we said how it wasn't going to be sufficient, and yet again, when we're proven correct, we're ignored. Because what we've got there is an above ground power line from the Telstra supply to the watchtower. We'll get to the watchtower in a minute. These overhead power lines, they were all the rage when we're getting around in HD Holdens. Neil Armstrong was just about on the moon. It sort of puts in perspective how much thought's being put into the job for this crucial infrastructure. Anyway, enjoy the dinosaur. I'm pretty happy about it. This is the watchtower on the top of Arapiles. It's an absolutely amazing view up here. Anyway, there's a number of ways you can get up here. I drove up here this morning. I've done a couple of interesting rock climbs just over that way that'll get you up here. Some people just hike up Central Gully and make their way for the brilliant view. Pretty sure the fire spotter on January the 9th never thought he was going to witness what he did. At about 12:30, the fire was spotted and the call was made. It made its way from over there, north of Mt Lake, across into Natimuck in about an hour, continued on through Quantong. Another tongue of the fire, actually some of that went over my house, went closer towards Polkemet and ended up near Vectus, on its way to Remlaw. When the fire hit Natimuck, the power poles went down, which will happen, that's expected with overhead power lines, and power was cut. As we discussed before, the Telstra Tower, which is 150 metres over there, its power supply failed, which means the power supply to the watchtower failed, which coincided with the telephone outage, and unfortunately at the same time the CFA's own fireground radio system failed. So I can only imagine the perplexed situation the fire spotter was in, knowing all that happened all at once. And I'll do a pan around in a second. We can have a look at the fireground from up here. It continued at a high rate of knots to the southeast. It had a howling northerly behind it. That neck of the woods just there, several houses were taken out. It jumped the 3-chain road very easily and continued on its way through some cereal stubbles, some lentil stubbles, and about 50 to 55 minutes later it impacted Natimuck. That's when the power line was hit down there. Unfortunately, houses were taken out, and it continued through and past Natimuck before the westerly and the southerly influence hit it, and then it sort of tracked back to the north slightly and impacted Quantong. It would have been an horrendous time for that fire spotter to see what was going on. As a Wimmera person, we've always been told from anywhere in the Wimmera you can see this tower. You can see it from Nil, you can see it from Dimbulla, you can see it from Horsham, halfway to Garoke, down towards Balmoral, you can see it. Fire was coming. Now this didn't happen all the way through the Natimuck fire because it went down. Up here today it's going to get to 37 degrees, which is pretty warm, and I think there's been a new development. Now when that development was, I don't know, but the tower isn't manned today. It does have a very shiny flash looking remote controlled camera up there. It's panning and it's looking from a line. I think it would be gathering information from Garoke in a sphere across Natimuck. I reckon it might just be going past Haven, maybe that far. Interestingly, there's one on the other side of the tower that is inoperable. Well, it hasn't shifted in the 20 minutes I've been here. So I can surmise from that, given that there's nobody in the tower, and the remote controlled camera that looks after the other 180 degrees, that there's actually no surveillance on this 37 degree day. It's quite concerning, given that if a fire was to start today, it may not be spotted in time, and we've now got 4 horrific days later this week coming at us. So I thought I'd come up here and be comforted by the fact that there couldn't possibly be another shortcoming with the Mt Arapiles tower. A particular alarming aspect of the communications failures on the afternoon of January the 9th with the grass flat fires was, as that catastrophic fire event was tearing across the landscape there, the Telstra system went down, which meant that the big emergency app went down, which meant that the ability for the fire tower to communicate went down. The CFA own radio system went down, so that was inoperable. Firefighters on the ground couldn't communicate to each other. The reports of 2 CFA fire trucks with full crews suffering a burnover event each could have been such a catastrophe. Fortunately, they were all right. It happened just out there, fully 4 kilometres from where I'm sitting. "12 months ago today, a fire started here in the Little Desert National Park, 15 kilometres to the west of here. Local CFA volunteers advised the Incident Control Centre that it was going to be huge, it had a powerful wind behind it, and that they start to think about evacuating Dimbulla, to which they were told nothing to worry about. Well, within 4 hours it had reached here, taking out this part of the Little Desert, which is still closed, taking out this private property, destroying this fence, continuing on through the Little Desert Lodge, which to this day hasn't been rebuilt, and then on to Dimbulla, sure enough. The mismanagement continued, and 10 days later, Goroke was under attack from flames and fire that came out of a poorly controlled fire break by Forest Fire Management. West Wimmera Action Group has met with a number of department heads, staff of departments that are involved in protecting this country. We've been given lip service, nods, shaking of hands, but no action. 12 months on, January 27th, 2026, the state's headed for temperatures well in excess of 45 degrees. Very little fuel reduction burns have been done. We've just seen what happened at Natimuck on January the 9th, and I have great apprehension and fears that somewhere today there's going to be a repeat, and perhaps even worse, of the fiasco of last year's January 27th fire. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to hold our government to task. They clearly aren't prepared. About the only thing they are prepared for is with their excuses. So let's see how today washes out, and let's see how the excuses roll at the end of it.